Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. So it's been a while since I did a solo video, but it's been a busy few weeks setting up the Huddle Breakdown podcast. Thank you to everyone who has listened to that and subscribed to that so far. I'm going to start with the defeat yesterday. So 1-0 against Rangers in January, 19 points behind. The league's over, the 10 in a row is over. It's been over for a long time now. The performance itself was actually pretty good for 60 minutes, and then a moment of madness from near Beaton. That was the end of it, really. But one thing that I do want to touch on is just the defeatist attitude of the team and the mentality of it. Once near Beaton got sent off, never mind the goal went in, it was almost inevitable that goal was going to go in, and they were almost defeated as soon as Beaton left the field. So that was disappointing to see, but ultimately you should not be reliant on one game in January for your season to be defined. That's what is the key point to remember here. Celtic should not be 19 points behind at this stage. Neil Lennon should not have been in charge for that game, and this could have been solved 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago. It could have been solved after the Ferencváros game. That's how long this has been building. The last 5 games, yes, good performances, but it took that long. It took until before Christmas before Neil Lennon changed the team and brought Ismail Assaro into the team, brought David Turnbull into the team, played 2 strikers up front in a system that had 2 strikers. That's what has led to this. That's the problem. That's why there's frustration, and that's why Celtic need to rebuild, rethink, and go again next season. They need to sit down, the board need to sit down and find out who is the man that is going to lead Celtic into the future. Because one thing that did irk me over the last couple of weeks, and probably since the start of the season, is the talk of the 10 in a row, because obviously the 10 in a row is a big deal. Obviously that's what this season was about, and it would have been history. But seasons do not finish if a team wins 10 titles in a row. The league continues, Europa League continues, Champions League continues, and that's the key point I want to hit on in this video, is that the decline of Celtic has been in Europe, has been globally. The brand has shrunk, the club has shrunk, and that is more damaging than not winning the 10th title in a row. And I do want to talk about that and the form in Europe and what I think should be the way that the board go around. And the board has to share a lot of this blame, because this, I think the board needs a completely rehash first of all, but this is the key points I want to look at. So I'll look at Celtic in Europe and the decline throughout the 10 in a row. So 2011-2012 was the first title that Celtic won in this 10 in a row. The next Champions League was in 2012-2013, and that's a famous Champions League group where Celtic beat Barcelona and they finished second in the group, behind Barcelona after picking up a result in Celtic Park, beating Spartak Prague, Benfica behind them as well. So they finished with 10 points into the last 16 in the Champions League, eventually beaten by Juventus well enough. But that was the announcement. That was when Neil Lennon brought back the Thunder, as he said back then. Fast forward another year, dead last in a group. Tough group though. Barcelona, Ajax, Milan. Fair enough. You have to give them credit. That's a very tough group. The following year, Celtic are beaten by Maribor in the playoffs and they enter the Europa League. They're beaten by Inter Milan in the last 32 of the Europa League. 2015-2016, beaten by Malmo in the playoffs, and then they finished dead last in the group with Ajax, Fenerbahce, and Molde. Molde topped that group. Following year, dead last in the Champions League, Barcelona, Man City, and Borussia Mönchengladbach. Couple of good performances, not good results. 2017-2018, finished in the third in the group, Anderlecht, PSG, and Bayern Munich, into the Europa League, beaten by Zenit St. Petersburg in the last 32. 2018-19, beaten by AAK Athens in the third round qualifier. So you're really starting to see the decline as Celtic go on. Second in the Europa League group. Strong Europa League group, in fairness. RB Salzburg and Leipzig both in that group. That was a good Europa League performance. Beaten by Valencia in the last 32. 2019-2020, beaten by Cluj in the third round qualifiers. Good Europa League group. Lazio, beating them home and away, topped the group, beaten by Copenhagen in the last 32. This year, beaten by Ferencváros in the qualifiers, bottom of the group in the Europa League, Lille, Milan, Sparta Prague. So you're talking about a 10-year period where Celtic have not been competing at all in the Champions League or Europa League, haven't gotten past the last 32 of the Europa League in that 10-year period. That is a steady decline. That you have gone from starting off that year the decade in 2012-2013 when the first Champions League group under Neil Lennon, 10 points, Barcelona, Sparta Prague, Benfica into the last 16, a brilliant Champions League, and you're ending the decade finishing dead last in the Europa League with a group of Milan, Lille and Sparta Prague. That is a steady decline, and that is the issue that I think is a bigger issue than not winning the 10 in a row, because European form mirrors club form, shows you how good you are, shows you how good you are outside of Scotland. And let's face it, Scotland is not that good a league. That is why Celtic need to measure. They have always measured themselves outside of Scotland, because they've been competing against Rangers for the league, and then in the Champions League, Europa League, that is where Celtic have been judged, and that is where the biggest stars make their name. Now, where do the club lay the blame? So, firstly, the decision making when it came to management. Neil Lennon, right man for the job at the start of the year. Then Brendan Rodgers in the middle, excellent ambition, and probably should have ended a little bit nicer than it did. But then you go back to Neil Lennon, the wrong decision, the easy decision, and the wrong man for the job. Players sold in that period and the value of them. Kieran Tierney, the highest value, 27 million last year. Moussa Dembele, 22 million, offered 30 million the year before. They kept him, and then he went down in value. Virgil van Dijk, 15 million for Virgil van Dijk, who is now the world's best centre-back. He's worth over 100 million. 15 million they sold him for. Victor Wanyama, 14 million. Went on to have a brilliant career for Southampton. Signed by Spurs, injury problems, not his fault really, but 14 million at the time. Stuart Armstrong still playing for Southampton, 7 million they sold him for. And one player I want to touch on, Odsonne Edouard, the player that Celtic desperately tried to hold on to this year. He was probably worth in the range of 25 to 30 million, let's say, give or take. They kept him. They're going to sell him for 15 to 20. I guarantee you next year that's what Odsonne Edouard will go for. So what is the solution to all this? Well, I think the solution is focus on European form. Because if you focus on European form and try and beat the teams that are better than you, then you will get better. It's simple. It's you play against the best. You have to beat the best to be the best. If you're continuing to fight and scrap for domestic trophies, quadruple treble, yes, historic, brilliant. But what does that mean if Celtic are getting thumped against Lille, against Sparta Prague, getting beaten by Milan, not one victory at Celtic Park? That is not good enough. So I think European form, European qualifiers, get back into the Champions League, focus on that. Look at Ajax, for example. They are the team that you want to look at as an example, because fair enough, Eredivisie is a little bit higher standard, quality is spread out a little bit more, and the money is higher than it is in Scotland. So money is a key issue here, so you don't want to forget that. Ajax, when Mark Overmars came in as the sporting director, he essentially said he wanted to make Ajax Europe-proof. That meant that he felt, exactly as I feel about Celtic, if you make the team good enough for Europe and you put all your eggs in the European basket as opposed to the domestic basket, then the domestic will come automatically because you will be good enough for Europe, therefore you're good enough in your own league and you're good enough to win it. And essentially what they did was they promoted younger stars, and they also brought in some key stalwarts that had European experience and were good enough at that level and experienced enough to just nest into the team with the younger players, and they created the team that made it to the Champions League semi-final, beaten by Spurs. And ultimately what that did was they weren't afraid to sell the players. So Donny van de Beek they've sold to Manchester United, and a couple of other players that they've sold to Barcelona and to Juventus for upwards of 50 million. So why were they worth that? They weren't worth that because they were dominating in the Eredivisie. They were worth that because they were dominant in the Eredivisie, but they've also proven themselves in Europe, and they're good enough to play for a Champions League semi-final. That is why the value of those players go up, and that is where Celtic need to look for. If Celtic are going to be a selling club, which ultimately they are, they need to be doing it in Europe. Otherwise, they are not going to get the money that they deserve for the players that they're selling, like Kieran Tierney, like Moussa Dembele, like Virgil van Dijk, and like Odsonne Edouard next year. That is what I think Celtic need to do. What do you think Celtic need to do? Ultimately, yes, the board needs sorting, but what do you do with the board? What do you do with the manager? Who should be the next Celtic manager? Because it's not going to be Neil Lennon, because the 10 in a row is gone. The League Cup is gone. The Scottish Cup, who knows? At least we won last year's. That's all I've got to say. I'm Enda Call, has been calling it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with another Huddle breakdown with Joko James and Alan Morrison shortly, probably the next couple of days, Wednesday or Thursday. Subscribe to the channel if you want to listen to that or you want to watch it instead. I'm Enda Call, has been calling it. Thanks for watching.